words are about to be spoken on the extreme life of Matt Hardy. There you go. Presented to you by the ad-free shows and podcast heat networks. I'm John Alba. That is the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. We are talking the Attitude Era here at 90s Wrestling Con. I believe that's what they call synergy.
That is synergy. You're right. There are definitely parallels, no doubt.
By talking about those things, we are here in Atlantic City, Jersey, my home state. First time I've got a chance to do a home state show, so thank you for everyone who came out here to support the extreme life of Matt Hardy, and we're doing something very cool with this because after our podcast, stick around, Brother Nero, Jeff Hardy, is going to be doing a live acoustic concert, and I know we're waiting for the Jeff Hardy Live in AC, live album that you'll find streaming wherever, so he's loving this, man. He loves doing these concerts.
I mean, it's his passion. His passion for music and performing reminds me very much of his passion for wrestling when we first started in the early 90s. So, yeah, it's very cool to see, and it's something he really loves with every fiber of his being. So it's going to be excited to sit back and watch him perform tonight. And I got to say, since we're on your home turf, John, I promise we'll put you over strong tonight, brother. We got you know how the wrestling biz goes. We got to make you look good in your hometown, brother.
That's right. I appreciate the rub. Thank you.
Or either we could beat you like Vince every week.
right. Why do you think Vince liked that so much? Why do you think it was like his thing to beat someone in their hometown?
I think he felt like it was going to get good heat, and I think in his mind he justified like I can get heat on an individual by taking advantage of the hometown star, and then I'll use this heat to build him into something bigger. But I also think in the back of his mind he really enjoyed seeing people kind of be embarrassed in front of their hometown fans. I don't like when you talk about the JR thing, how some of the things he did to JR it seemed like he was kind of digging at him a little bit whenever he did.
You think?
Yeah.
Little mean-spirited? Yeah, well, thankfully, the Hardys only do jobs in their hometown when they are on pay-per-view, so thankfully.
Yeah, we were literally like, whenever they decided at WrestleMania 2000, Edge and Christian were going to win because they liked what they were doing, turning heel and being bad guys. And they had talked about us winning on that night, and they said, no, we're going to hold off. We really think it's going to propel Edge and Christian to a higher level as heels if they win the tag titles. You are going to win at SummerSlam, and it's in North Carolina. It's in Raleigh, North Carolina, so that makes it all the better. So that had been like set for months in advance, 6 months. And then a week before the show, Vince said, damn it! Too many people think you're going to win. We've got to change it. We'll just do it at the next show. Wherever that's at. It was Philadelphia, Unforgiven. In a cage match. He said, we'll make it another gimmick match since people love you in those. And we're like, I don't know. People are kind of waiting for this payoff. Sometimes it's okay to do it even if they are expecting it. And I think sometimes people overthink pro wrestling. And I think that was one of the scenarios where they were overthinking pro wrestling.
Thankfully, social media doesn't overthink pro wrestling at all. It's really nice quality discourse whenever you open up Elon Musk's X.
Oh, boy. Oh, don't even get me started on social media.
The best thing about social media?
It gives everyone a voice.
The worst thing about social media?
It gives everyone a voice.
Hey, listen, if you're enjoying his voice, we drop The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy every single Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, and at extremehardy.com. As we tape this, we're over 130 episodes in. We've been doing this for almost 3 years now, which it's such a pleasure again to hear all these great stories. And the best part about it is, Matt, we haven't even scratched the surface on some of these stories that you have to offer. And for those of you who are here live with us today, you're going to hear some of those that even I haven't heard. And I'm really excited because we are covering in long form the Attitude Era today, an era that I would assume for many of the people here, except for the small children in the back, that it probably defined a lot of your wrestling fandom. And we're going to talk about some of those hidden stories and hidden gems here. But before we can, Matt Hardy, we have a tradition on our podcast every single week. So please, Matt Hardy, hit us with that Matt Fact.
Matt Fact. Matt's first pay-per-view emanated from Atlantic City.
And I would assume you're referring to WrestleMania 4.
Yes, the first pay-per-view myself and my brother ever watched, the whole pay-per-view from beginning to end, was WrestleMania 4, where Macho Man won the title. And that's what made us both diehard, lifelong wrestling fans and guys who had aspirations of being pro wrestlers and winning the WWF, WWE Tag Team Champions one single time. That's all we wanted to do with our lives. So we did okay.
And Macho was your guy.
Yeah, Macho was my guy. Like, we made bets on that, and I had bet on him saying that he was going to win that tournament.
What are you and Brother Nero wagering in 1988? It's like, who's got to go out and pick in the farm tomorrow? Like, who's cleaning up like the chicken shit like out of the barn? Like,
there was a big load of wood that had to be brought in the house, and that was our bet. It was firewood, and we had a bet like, well, we're gonna bet Jeff picked whoever his guy was. I picked Macho Man, and it may have been. I don't know, it's probably somebody else. You probably picked Hogan or somebody else.
Steamboat.
Maybe Steamboat. Who knows? Some typical babyface. And then, and then whoever lost the bet, or if no one won, I guess we both had to do it. But if someone won the bet and the other one lost, the other one had to bring all of the firewood into the house. So
rough day for Brother Nero.
Got out of a good chore there.
There you go. I like it. Well, so the most amazing thing about your career is that it's a story that emanates from the backwoods, as your wife Rebecca would say, the forest of North Carolina, and you find yourself in the most popular time period of professional wrestling ever that allows you guys to still be in the public eye to this day. And people, Matt, I'd have to imagine, I mean, I've seen it firsthand, but you can speak to it better. Every day you're encountered with people who say, I remember watching you in the 90s. I remember watching you in the Attitude Era.
Yes. We are both very grateful that we got the opportunity to work for the WWE, and we're also both very grateful that we had the opportunity to wrestle during that era. You know, when the most wrestling fans ever were watching wrestling on TV, and wrestling was just so popular. It was insane. Like, even once we started full-time on the road with WWE in 1998, I remember being, when we were wearing the tights back in the day, right, before the Young Bucks bit our style. And I love to joke to the Young Bucks about that. It's my favorite. And whenever we're wearing our tights with the plaids or the flowers or whatever it may have been, we would go to hotels, like whenever the TV events were, when we were on developmental deals, and we had our hotels, we had our rental cars paid for, if I could get the rental car, because I was only 24 at that time. Usually you had to be 25 to technically get it. I'll tell a story about the headbangers.
I was going to say more on that in a minute.
Yeah, more on that in a little bit, because the headbangers started getting cars for us. But we would pull up to these TV hotels where was a hotel book for us because we weren't making a ton of money. But, I mean, there would be 400, there'd be 500 people, like, waiting on the WWE wrestlers to be there, just at these TV events. And then I remember the first WrestleMania that we were part of, and we were there for the whole week, which was 15, and it was in Philly, if I'm not mistaken, right? We came to a hotel. There were thousands of people at that hotel waiting there. And it's like you had to push. We weren't even important. And you had to, like, push and squeeze your way through the crowd to get in and go to your room. And, like, really, you almost couldn't leave your room. It was so crazy. And Taker just talked about how it was so cool that wrestlers were like rock stars at that stage, and they really were. And, like, we were able to be part of that period, which was wild.
And you guys get signed, you know, a couple years into it, but you are working as, you know, low card, unsigned talent, enhancement talent early on. You're not on a full-time contract. And I think a lot of people might not even truly be aware of this, but you guys could have potentially had opportunities to work for one of the other big three promotions.
Yes. Something we have talked about some is whenever we were extras for WWE, we were in Philly, there was a point where ECW invaded WWE. I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but Sandman spit some beer into Savio Vega's face. And we were backstage, and a lot of the locker room got really upset about it. And apparently not many people knew this was happening, that they were working in concert. So we left there, and we actually ended up eating at Hooters. I don't know why, but Hooters on Penn's Landing. And whenever we're at this Hooters in Penn's Landing, when we walk in, we see Raven, Blue Meanie, Sandman, wasted out of his mind, and a couple other guys. And then someone recognize maybe Raven, and he said, "Hey, were you guys backstage? I know you guys do some stuff with WWF." And he said, what were the guys in the back? He said, what were they acting like? Oh, what were they acting like? Tell me. And we're like, I don't know. It seemed like a couple guys were mad. Some guys were just sitting there, very stoic. And then Sandman came over and talked. And he said, hey, are you guys any good? You got any tapes you can send me? He said, send me a tape. Here's my address. And he couldn't write it. Raven had to write it down. and we got his address. And he actually said, I'm serious. He said, send me a tape. And myself and my brother, we sent VHS tapes of me wrestling as Surge or High Voltage versus Will-O-the-Wisp, Jeff with a mask on. And Wolverine, he was Will-O-the-Wisp in most of these. Because whenever we do indies, if we could record them, we would wrestle each other. We had ladder matches in here. And Sandman saw this tape, and he watched it through. And this is going to be a shocker, but he'd been drinking this night. And Jeff and I, like, once again, we were still living at home in our basement. Our dad was upstairs, and we had a basement that we kind of converted to our deal. We were both still young at this time, right? And at 3:30 in the morning, the phone rings, and our dad storms out of bed, and he goes, what the hell? Who's calling here at 3:30 in the morning? And it was Sandman. And he said, yo, this is Sandman. He said, I need to talk to Matt and Jeff. He said, listen, you son of a bitch, you better not call here again at 3:30 in the morning. And we said, who is it? He said, it's Sandman. Jeff said, let me talk to him. And then we got on the phone and talked to him for a little bit. And then he invited us. We came to Philly. We did shows for him. He was going to put us on an international tour of the Middle East he was doing very soon. And he also said he wanted to bring us into ECW and give us an opportunity there to maybe work there. So we were this close to doing something for ECW and maybe working for ECW, but then we signed with WWE just a few weeks later.
What a different trajectory that could have been.
Yeah, it would have changed a lot of things for sure.
And you guys end up getting signed by the World Wrestling Federation not long after, as you said, and immediately you are thrust into a locker room that is full of a lot of really talented individuals and John Bradshaw Layfield. and that's not a shot at JB Alpha, by the way. I hear, rumor and innuendo would suggest that you were indoctrinated to the locker room pretty quickly.
Yeah, when especially in those days, it was kind of the wild, wild west days. And thankfully, for wrestlers that followed us, that has changed some. Well, hell, JBL was absolutely the master of hazing, and he would make sure that people belonged there. There was once we started on the road, so our second or third loop maybe, we would do 10 days on. We would go, they would do a live TV. They would do a tape TV the next day, and then you would work through the whole week, right? You do 10 days on, 4 days off. And it's our third week on the road, and we're actually flying from the TV to San Antonio, Texas, where our live event is that evening. And one of our flights in the connection had totally been canceled, and it just wasn't happening. And they knew we were going to be to the show late, and the opening match of the show was the Hardys versus Too Cool. I think they were still Too Much at that time. And we had worked with them for a few weeks, so we were pretty cool. We knew what we were doing. We had told Jack Lanza, rest in peace. Jack Lanza was the producer of the show, and we'd let him know, calling on a payphone. It's so crazy even thinking of this. Calling on a payphone to him to let him know that our flight was canceled, but the next flight that we can get in, we're going to get there, and we'll have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we'll be able to change real quick, and we can still go out and do our match. You can keep us in the same spot because we kind of knew what we were doing. And then we get to the venue that day, the building, and these guys obviously all know about it, right? I remember we walk in the building, me and Jeff, we're nervous as you could possibly be. We grabbed our bags. We said, we're so sorry, guys. Our flight was canceled. We're so sorry, guys. Our flight was canceled. We got here as fast as we could. We just did a taxi. We didn't even run a car. And then I remember JBL said, well, hell, the Hardys have been on the road for 3 weeks, 2 weeks and a little change. And now they think they're main event, big-time television stars. They think they're the champs, that they're more important than The Undertaker, than the Stone Colds, than all the other top stars here because they just show up whenever the hell they want to. And we said, we let Jack Lanza know, we just got here as fast as we could. We're going to try and change real quick because we've got to be out there and wrestle in 8 minutes. And he said, all right, well, hey, since you're such a big timer, I know you don't want to shake my hand because I'm just a piece of trash. Here, the locker room's right over there. That's the locker room you need to go. I was like, oh, thank you. And we scurry and we run over there with our bags. And we're nervous as shit, right? We're new and just starting rookies. And the last thing we want to do is piss off these guys. And then we take our bags and we roll into the room. And whenever the door opens and we take our bags inside, the Undertaker is in the room by himself, back in the corner, naked, wrapping his knees. And we go, oh my God, we're so sorry. We didn't. And JBL said, oh no, you deserve to be in the dressing room with the main event. Since you're a big star, you only stay here at the beginning. Taker said, yeah, go ahead, have a seat. We said, oh, no, we'll leave. No, we insist. And a couple other guys kind of like, they made a wall where we couldn't walk out of this room. And we go, oh, okay. And now Taker's just like looking at us naked, just staring us down. And we're changing. We take off our clothes, getting dressed, tighten up our boots. Okay, sorry, we're going to leave now. We're going to the ring. We go to the ring. We go out. We do our match. All good. We come to the back, and we go in that room, and like Taker's bag is still there where he dressed. He isn't there. But our bags, where they weren't there. They were nowhere to be found. And then I remember we came out, and I said, excuse me, guys. I think maybe it's Bob Holly. Asked Bob Holly. Said,
another rational person, for sure.
I said, did you happen to see anyone leave with our bags? Because our bags aren't in here now, and that's like they got our clothes and all our money and everything is in those bags, and they're pretty important. He said, well, no, I don't know where your bags are. If you came and you dressed in the wrestling locker room and you got here on time, he said, we would have looked after them. No, he said, well, you're in here like a big star. Somebody probably walked in and stole them. He said, maybe you'll get here earlier next time. And then I said, excuse me, Mr. Bradshaw, do you happen to know where your bags are? I said, did someone take them? I guess that's what happens when you dress in your own private locker room because you're that big of a deal. And we just like start searching throughout the arena. We probably searched for an hour and 15 minutes. We were the first match, right? So we're doing this. The show is like starting to wind down. And Road Dogg grabs me and pulls me aside. And Road Dogg says, hey, look. Your bags are in the dumpster right outside, but they got zipped up real good so your stuff didn't get messed up. But don't you tell anyone that I told you because I don't want none of the heat you have. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for telling us. And we did. We finally found our bags out there. But, I mean, that was like a very commonplace thing back in those days in the Attitude Era. The hazing was unreal.
Well, I mean, the APA, the Acolytes, Farouk and Bradshaw, they're two of those great characters from the Attitude Era that – I mean, you guys have a lot of history with the APA, and I think some people tend to overlook because, they think of Edge and Christian, they think of the Dudleys, but the APA, they're the first team that put you over for a tag team championship, and I know you really enjoyed some of your stories working with Ron Simmons and JBL.
Very, very much so. Michael Hayes came up to us probably 2 weeks before we won the titles, and he said, hey, Vince really likes what you're doing. We're doing some good shit. We're doing some good stuff. They're going to put the titles on you. And they're going to do it in your hometown. They are? And I said, do the APA, do the Acolytes know that? And he said, well, they don't yet, but they will. And it turns out they found out like the day before, 2 days before. And they ended up being really cool. They didn't have any problems about it, whatever else. We had the match. It was pretty quick. It was a sprint. I actually just watched it recently, ironically enough. And at one point, our finish was the Event Omega, and is where I would come off the top with a leg drop, and Jeff would do a splash. And we would do that every night. When we were doing 10 days on, 4 days off, we were doing that every single night. And it would either like be our finish, or we would miss it, or we would hit it, and it would be broke up, and we'd go to whatever the finish would be. But we did that all the time. So we told Ron, we said, we could do this to you real quick at one point. I think you kick out because it's kind of like our established finish. And he's like, all right. And then I end up positioning him with a rude awakening neck breaker. We go up, we hit the Event Omega on him, and he goes, ugh. And I thought we took pretty good care of Ron, And then I remember afterwards we talked, and I said, how was that? Was that all right? That movie? He said, where you both came off the turnbuckles? He said, we won't be doing that again. It's just as cool as he possibly could. I was like, whoa. that's still it's just the way he looks. Because Ron's one of the funniest dudes, and I'm so glad we do a lot of appearances with him nowadays. But yeah, just when he looked and he just like took his eyes and he looked at him and he said, "We won't be doing that again." Yeah, man, we took care of you too. Maybe we should have laid it in, brother. But yeah, and Bradshaw was cool with that. Ron was always cool. You know, Bradshaw had his thing where he was kind of like he was the guy in the locker room that would haze people or make sure they belong there, make sure the locker room was in check and whatnot. But we had a lot of great times working with those guys, and we learned a lot working for those guys. And one of the funniest things during that period, Bradshaw would see, I'll go back with Michael Hayes. When we first got together, Michael Hayes said, "Look, if we're going to do this, and I'm going to manage you guys, and we're going to be the new birds, we're going to be the new free birds." He said, "Look, we got to make it a brotherhood." He said, "We're going to wrestle together. We're going to talk strategy together. We're going to break bread together. We're going to get in a rental car and drive town to town together. And we're going to hill a room. And we're going to go in a hotel room. We'll get a double. And you guys can switch nights. Who's going to take the bed and the other one can sleep on the floor. But we're going to do it all together because we're a team." And Bradshaw could see how Michael was talking to us, trying to hype us up. And Michael Hayes taught us more than anybody else did. But he did this real weird thing. He had like this routine, and he didn't want to break that routine ever. And Michael's routine was like whenever he would leave the town, he would stop somewhere and he would drink. That was his thing at that time. And now keep in mind, Jeff and I, we didn't drink at all at this time. Nothing. We used to be good kids till this damn wrestling business messed us up.
Yeah.
And I remember we drove and we traveled with Scotty Too Hottie some. We traveled with Edge and Christian, Adam and Jay some. And we loved Cracker Barrel, right? Cracker Barrel was a huge wrestling spot to stop at, especially in the 90s. And we were driving. The first night we're on the road, we're driving, and we said, "Okay, we're going to stop and eat, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Cracker Barrel sound good?" Jeff said, "Oh, that sounds great to me." Michael said, "Cracker Barrel. All right, well, if they got some good food, that's all right." And we go in there, and we order our stuff. I get grilled chicken tenderloins with a salad. Jeff orders whatever he orders. And Michael's just sitting there looking at the menu. He said, "Where's the damn alcohol?" And I said, "Well, they don't sell alcohol at Cracker Barrel, Michael." And he says, "They don't sell alcohol here? What kind of restaurant is this?" And then, okay, fine. And he sits there and he's just like pounding. He just sits there like this. I think he has meatloaf. And he goes, "We're not eating here again." We eat our food. We do that. We get in there. We say, "All right, well, there's a new rule. From now on, I don't know what you guys are doing." We would stop and we'd get our alcohol. Then we'd start driving to the next town. He said, "From now on, if you two young boys are going to stop at a place, there has to be a damn bar. If they don't have an alcohol license, then no longer can we stop there."
Well, that would bring you to a few bars with Michael Hayes, traveling alongside some of these great teams of the Attitude Era, including The Brood, which Edge and Christian, the greatest theme song in wrestling history, Gangrel's, okay? When people ask me what are your top 5 favorite wrestling theme songs, I say Gangrel's 5 times because it is the best of the best. And you guys are running shows with them. You're being managed by Hayes. They're being managed by Gangrel. And you guys have a little bit of an encounter at a Hooters, I believe, if that's correct.
It was an Outback.
An Outback
in Pittsburgh. I remember it was a big night for Kurt Angle because it was Pittsburgh. And we ended up talking to these guys. Said, "Okay, do you want to go to the Outback that we've gone to a few times?" And we ended up going to that Outback. And it was on the list when we were traveling with Michael. They were traveling with Gangrel. We had our third members of the team there, both teams. And Outback was okay because they had alcohol. And then Michael's routine, his ritual, he would go in, he would order a drink, he would order food, he would order another drink, he would bum a cigarette from someone every time. Always the same. He never kept them. He would just say, "Hey, can I get a cigarette?" He would have another drink, and then he would get a box to take his food to eat later. And then he'd get pretty drunk while we were there. And on this particular occasion, we were in Outback. He'd done his whole ritual. He'd done his routine. And then all of a sudden, they were talking about tough guys. And Mark said, "Yeah, I don't think any of you guys could have made it to world class with me." When I was there, me and the Birds were running with the Von Erichs. And then he said something to Gangrel. And then Gangrel said back to him, he said, "Oh, is that right? You think you're tougher than I am? Is that what you think? I've been around for a minute." And he said, "Oh, is that right? You think we need to step outside? You think we need to step outside?" And we were finished eating, and Gangrel said, yeah, I'm going to step outside right now. And then we go out there. He is about that action. And it's like up on this big ass high hill in Pittsburgh. And I'll never forget Michael's out there. He said, all right. He said, what you got to say? What you going to do? And he said, you think you're tough? And he like headbutted Gangrel. And then Gangrel headbutted him back and like split Michael over. And he started like just like a cartoon character. He's going back and back and back. And he almost fell off the ledge like down this whole hill, which had been comical out of this park. And then like he's like, all right, this one's over. But I ain't finished with you yet, vampire. Now they're having a headbutting contest. What are we doing here? And then we would tell these stories sometimes about how Michael. So we were in Montreal one time, and then like Michael made us come to his room afterwards, and he was wasted. And he's like, "No, we got to put together the game plan. We got to do this. We got to do this. Or Vince is going to do this. We got to do this. Got to do this." And my brother had it. He'd had it with him at this point. Michael goes to jump up on. He says, you think you're hot? You think you're hot shit because you can springboard? I can springboard too. And it's one of those old school air conditioning units that are on the wall. And he jumps up on it and he falls backwards and hits the floor. Wham! And like he's unconscious and he's going. And then like there's like blood trickling from behind his head. And I was like, oh shit, he's bleeding. And I was like, Jeff, what should we do? Jeff said, I'm going back to the room. And then the next morning he woke up and said, what you do to me? What did y'all do to me? We said, we didn't do anything. We just left your room, and I don't. What did you do to yourself? Bradshaw would say to me every time, he said, when the Hardys turn on Michael Hayes, they will kill him. Well, he said they've had enough. When the Hardys turn on Michael Hayes, they will kill him.
Perhaps if he had his way and had his desired ring gear for you guys, he might have had some self-defense mechanisms. Would you remind us again what Michael Hayes' original pitch for the Hardy Boys outfits? Because like many of you, I see some of you out there, you got, the sleeves and, the kick pants. Like all of us have done the Hardy juke at some point. If Michael Hayes had his way, Matt, that could have looked a lot different.
Yeah, we had stopped at Applebee's, which qualified because they had a bar. And he had done his routine. He was drinking and he was sitting there and we were kind of brainstorming a little bit. He was creatively brainstorming. He said, hey, I know what we need to do, which is going to be different and it's going to get over. He said, we needed to come out with these robes, these long robes. They go from the bottom of your head all the way to the floor. He said, and they're made of only forks, knives, and spoons. Forks, knives, and spoons. Fork, knives, and spoons.
Oh, my.
Can you see it? Yeah. And he was very, he said stuff that I was like, this is crazy. But then later I go like, this is genius. And when he said this, like, this is crazy. And then 24 hours later, I said, that was crazy. and we told that story, and I think he did too, to Bruce Pritchard. And it became like part of the whole lure, right? Yeah. The whole bit.
Dude.
Yeah. And he says, I think we need, he said, ask the Hardys about it. Michael proposed to them. They have ring jackets made of forks, knives, and spoons. And he meant just like metal, full metal forks, spoons, and knives. That jacket would have weighed 50 pounds. It would have been outrageous.
Going through airports with that would have been real fun.
Oh, my God. That'd been a nightmare.
Summer nights are on my radio, Matt Hardy. I've been binging old school Sammy Hagar, Van Halen, because I am going to see Sammy Hagar perform Van Halen songs in New Jersey at the end of this month, and I picked up my tickets with Game Time. It was one of the easiest processes that I've ever had with my ticket buying experience because Game Time makes getting tickets for concerts and events faster and easier. Even if you don't buy tickets right away, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to the start of the show with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying concert tickets. Matt, you've got a very busy schedule. You're not always able to plan out if you can actually go to a concert or go to an event, can you?
No, it is tough to sometimes. And I know now my next 7 or 8 weekends are booked. But I tell you, whenever I do find a good concert and it's on a weekday and I am free, if I am getting tickets for it, Game Time is where I start.
That's because they got their last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And you save even more with their exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event or the concert, whatever it may be. With their zone deals, you save even more than that when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the actual seats itself. And you know they're very transparent because you toggle on that all-in pricing feature. And it's going to show you the entire total up front. And Matt Hardy, we love transparency here at the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, don't we?
We absolutely do. And they are. They're the most transparent people you could possibly get your tickets from. Game Time, it is one and done. They let you know everything in advance. And they're very upfront. They're very transparent. And we do love that here.
And they got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code HARDY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code HARDY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah. So many of these great names. Like, we know the big stars of the Attitude Era, and we'll talk a little bit about them, but I really like discussing some of the lesser known names or the people who had those unique personalities, like the Headbangers, for example. And you mentioned that you weren't able to rent a car, so the Headbangers kind of took you under their wings a little bit, and things got a little dicey one time.
Yeah, we because I wasn't 25, I was 24 when we first started. I just turned 24. And so if we would go to the rental cars, we were given a voucher because they were paying for our cars. We were on developmental deals in the beginning. And with these vouchers, you were supposed to be 25. Sometimes people would let us slide. They go, oh, you guys are part of WWF. You know, we're okay. We can let you guys have whatever. But a lot of times it would be someone that was very strict and they were listening to the actual rules of the rental car companies. And then we realized, because we met the Headbangers initially in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we'd kind of become friends with them and we had a good bond or whatever because we'd worked with them doing indies before the WWF. And they came in one time, they said, hey, can you sign that car over to me? And we said, yeah, I can. They would let us do it. So we organized and we would meet each other at the airport and they would get our car and the four of us rode together. So we were riding together. There was a time where I was driving, always myself or Jeff, we were the young boys, we would drive, they would kind of chill and relax. I'm driving and there'd been a wreck earlier on in this trip. We're driving somewhere that's like 3 hours and the trip has taken like 4.5 hours and we're pushing it because we're trying not to be late for the show that night. And we come around this big bend, we're in this interstate and all the traffic was backed up. And Mark Henry was in front of us. We were following him. He'd sat in this wreck too, like 50 miles back that we were in, and he was late also. And then all the cars slam on brakes and he like jerks to the right and he pulls off down an exit. He just doesn't need to get off there just so he doesn't hit the car in front of him because everything's backing up. And then we try and do the same, but then like it's backed off down the exit. So we go even to the right of him and we end up driving on like the guardrail. We end up getting on the guardrail. Have you ever seen when someone skateboards and they like do a rail slide?
Yeah,
and,
they
like,
grind on the rail.
Grinds on the rail.
Yeah.
So our car went on the piece of metal and steel right in the middle and was like balancing and I'm holding the car. And I'll never forget the Headbangers that were yelling. I can't believe we did not wreck the car. I was able to hold it steady and we slid all the way to the end. We like rail slid all the way on that guardrail. And I remember both Mosher and Thresh said, oh my God, man, you're going to kill us. Please don't. And Jeff was in the back and he was eating like a ham biscuit. And Jeff just said, hold it steady, Matt. And he was like kind of calm, very much in Jeff's personality, like little to no fear. And whenever we did finally get off the guardrail and we stopped, Jeff, this ham biscuit he was eating was like this small, like squished up in his hand. So he was like, hold it steady, man. That was his outlet. And these guys were like, oh my God. And then Mark Henry was like, Mark Henry said, they're dead. He said, I just saw them go around the curve and they're on this. He said they had to like go off the cliff. They had to roll the car through the field or whatever. And we actually beat him to the building, which is crazy. We like slid past all this traffic. And he walked in, he was giving us all hugs. He said, oh my God, I thought you guys were dead. I saw you go off on the guardrail and then there's no way you could have pulled back on. He said, that's a miracle you survived. And lo and behold, we found out, that was at the very beginning of the loop, like day one. And day one or day two. I went to fill up the gas tank. And as I started filling up the gas tank, I think the first time we had, or I'd had a car like this before. It took $40 to fill. Whatever, gas is 5 times as expensive now, right? But it took $40 to fill, and like it only took like $19 worth. And then we actually looked underneath the car, and it bent the gas tank in half, where only like half of the gas tank could be full. Yeah. So like we had damaged that car, and like you had to fill. And as opposed to like every time you would go a full
every
gas
hour
tank,
you got
right. And we had to keep it full the whole while because it was only half big.
Well, again, the Attitude Era, we know Rock, Austin, Taker, Kane, all those guys, but one of the essential elements of the Attitude Era truly was what you guys were doing in the tag team division with Edge and Christian and the Dudleys. And it really provided you guys quite the advantage over WCW because that's just not something that they were offering. When did you first realize that you guys were onto something special in building that tag division?
I think we realized we were onto something special the night after the No Mercy 1999 ladder match. That would be my guess.
The Terry Invitational Tournament.
Yes.
The TIT.
We had great chemistry with those guys, and Vince gave us that opportunity to do the best of series, and we just wanted to culminate in a ladder match because Jeff and I, we'd had these great ladder matches on indies, and we can't that really played to our style. And Sandman loved it and would call you at 3:30 in the morning, so obviously it was worth doing again. And we knew if we had Edge and Christian there, we could make a special match. Whenever we did that, and the crowd was applauding, and it was in Cleveland, they were applauding after every big spot. We like that was special. But when we came out the next night on Raw and just did a promo and showed respect for one another, and the crowd gave us another standing ovation, that was the moment we're like, we're on to something really special, and you could feel it in the venue that night.
And if I'm not mistaken, after you guys win the Terry Invitational Tournament, you stole the show. That was the first time you had like a major interaction with a big top star in the company.
Yeah, it was also the first night myself and Jeff drank a beer too. We came back and Stone Cold Steve Austin was there. He said, "Hey, he said, guys, come here." And he brought myself and Jeff and Edge and Christian. He said, "There's no denying this. You guys stole the show tonight." He said, "Everybody can man up and be honest about it." He said, "You guys stole the show tonight." He said, "That was incredible what you did." He said, "So here you go." He said, "Bring it in, guys." And he said, "Here's some Steve Weiser for everybody." And he did a big toast and cheered us, and we drank. He said, "It's great to have you on the team. Can't wait to see what you guys are going to do next," which was very, very cool.
Steve's kind of always been in your corner, hasn't he?
Yeah, Steve's always been supportive. He always gave us good advice. He was one of those guys that would sit back and watch the show, and if there was something he saw and picked up on that you could improve or do better, he would give you suggestions for it. And he would always offer up advice. And he was also one of those guys that still was pretty humble considering how big of a deal he was. Just like to do that acknowledgement of like, you guys stole the show tonight. This was your night. Everybody's going to be talking about you guys the next little bit. So congratulations. It was very cool. He'd give us those props.
Did you have an awareness at the time just how special the group of talent in that locker room was? Because you're talking about Austin, who arguably, in terms of a 5-year period, maybe has the greatest 5-year peak in wrestling history of anyone. And he's the 1A. The 1B is The Rock, who, by the way, biggest star in Hollywood today, 25, almost 30 years later. You got The Undertaker, who is revered as one of the greatest characters in professional wrestling. Were you guys truly aware of how special the talent group was?
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was very special, and just that they were such big stars, and they were so over, and just we felt very grateful and very blessed that we were on shows with these guys, because like I think we took it for granted because it was an everyday thing. Like those 10 days on, 4 days off, no matter what day it was, if it ended in a DAY, it was sold out. You know, it's crazy because you think about that. Well, we might not should run on a Wednesday night. It'd be hard to sell out. Monday night, sold out. Tuesday night, sold out. Wednesday night, sold out. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every night was sold out, which was crazy. And it was attributed to those guys because there were such big deals and big draws.
It is amazing to think just how much sheer star power that even an act like Too Cool would come out and get maybe the biggest reaction of the night just by doing their shtick, by doing their dance. I mean, Rikishi is someone who I know you have a lot of fondness for. Yeah. And, I mean, having guys like that in the locker room, what did that do for you? Any fun stories from guys like Rikishi over the years or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, people would say that all the time to me. They're like, "Oh, my God, did you get stink-faced by Rikishi?" what was that experience like? Was it awful?
Yes.
Was it a nightmare? And I was like, I think it kind of depends on what your relationship with Quiche was. Because I'll never forget the first time I was doing it, they said, but you, Matt. He said, you one of the good ones. I'm going to take good care of you. If you one of the good ones, he'd make it. I mean, it was almost delightful. He would clean up. There'd be baby powder. No sin at all. He would be absolutely perfect. And it's so funny. Then he someday said, I don't know. I'm not too fond of this individual. Might be a little more rough on this end. And that's funny. That's like that old school wrestling mentality, though. That's just how stuff was.
Do you know of anyone in particular who was on the receiving end of a not so great Rikishi stink face?
I think Jackal was.
Oh, Don Callis?
Yeah.
Really? Huh.
There's a few people that have got a true stink face back in the day.
Do you know? I don't think we've ever talked about this. Do you know the Mae Young story with the Bronco Buster? Have you ever heard this story?
I think I have.
So Mae Young, when she comes in, and I'm sure you probably have some Mae Young stories too from her being backstage at the time. Yeah, she was a ribber, you know.
Oh yeah.
And she gave a Bronco Buster to someone. I can't remember who it was. And when she did it, whoever it was like, God, that stunk. Like what was that smell? Now, if you know what a Bronco Buster looks like, you know what the visual is. May stuck like rotten fish in her pants and ribbed whoever it was by giving her a Bronco Buster.
Yeah, that adds up. That adds up for sure. I do know there was one point where she had to lay it on Edge one time. I think she had to give Adam a kiss, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And she did this a couple times to people too. And like she said, oh yeah, it'll be real easy. But then she like takes her tongue and like forces it in their mouth. She was like she was a nonstop ribber, man.
Well, and then you know the story with Bubba and her and the power bomb, right?
Yes.
Would you be able to share some of that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so does everyone remember the day that Bubba Ray Dudley power bombs Mae Young through off the stage through the table? And I guess Bubba wanted to take care of her. Naturally, she was 80-something years old or whatever she was. And he's like, all right, like, when I power bomb you, I'm going to cradle you with my knees, everything. I'm going to take care of you. And she goes, lay it in, you fucking pussy.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know that. So they're very good.
And as we know, he did.
Yeah.
Just being around those characters, man.
Yeah. And, something you said, something very special about the Attitude Era. And I think a lot of people were watching TV, and I think they did a good job from top to bottom of making the characters interesting, whatever the characters were. Like, everyone had some sort of quality or characteristic, I think, that would emotionally attach you to them. And everyone was over, from the opening match to the last match.
All because of Vince Russo.
Oh, your boy. Vince Russo loves John.
Apparently, yeah. I opened my Twitter mentions today, and yeah, apparently not. News to me.
But it was crazy how everybody from the beginning to the end of the show, when we were doing those live events, came out and they seemed like a big star. It was a big deal. And I think a lot of it was because, people's characters were really well defined in whatever it may be. Even if they weren't that great of a talker and they weren't a great promo or whatever, I think they would still find a way to take guys and make them interesting.
Who was the quirkiest character in the locker room during the Attitude Era? And I don't mean wrestling character. I mean individual.
Sure. In some ways, Steve Blackman was.
Steve Blackman?
He was always such an interesting character.
How so?
I mean, just because he's like this legit badass, and he was very strange and very weird, but he would also like start cracking jokes and like sometimes hear stuff that was funny. It was just very not what you would expect from him.
Interesting. Who gave the most trouble in the locker room at the time?
Who gave the most trouble?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's got to be Bradshaw, just in general. Just because he was the enforcer. He was the heater back in the day that was there to make sure.
The bailiff in Wrestlers Court, correct?
Yes.
Any Wrestlers Court stories that you can share with us here that were particularly memorable during that time?
Yeah. There was one of my favorite wrestlers' courts, even though it probably shouldn't be one of my favorites.
I was going to say, rumor has it involves you.
It was the day after we won the tag team titles from JBL and Farouk. We were at home because we were in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We went back home that night, and then we drove to Raleigh. Everyone was flying out of Raleigh, and we were going to, I want to say White Plains, New York, or Poughkeepsie, New York. Somewhere it was a smaller show because it was on a Wednesday. And I remember we get there, and Michael Hayes was waiting on us. He said, "Oh, got you guys a surprise today, boys. Got you guys a surprise." He says, "I done used all my miles, and I put you on the ticket with me." And he said, "I'm going to put you in first class today." And I was like, "That's okay. I know the whole roster's on this flight. We don't need to be in first class." He said, No, it's fine. Everybody's all set, and it's all done. You guys can ride in first." We're like, "I don't know, Michael. This is a little early to be riding in first class, trying to show off." And he said, No, it's all fine. And all the boys respect you anyway. And I remember we come in there, and we sit down in first. Beside one of us is like in front of Michael. The other one is here. And I want to say beside me was maybe Ron, and beside Jeff was Bob Holly or somebody. And I remember we're sitting there, and they said, "Okay, well, we're going to be closing the door here in just a few minutes. So, everyone, buckle your seatbelt and be prepared to go." They said, "Oh, wait. We have one last person who's running on the plane that was running late today, but they have been checked in." And all of a sudden, from the cockpit, into the door and down the hall, it's Kane. And Kane's sitting there, and he looks over like in first class, and there's no seat for him. And he's like, "Oh, I'm in the back. I'm in the back." And we go, No. And we're trying to get up, and they're going, No, sit down. And it turns out he checked in later than he was supposed to, but they allowed him to check in. And Michael thought all the first class seats were all taken, that the boys were going to sit in. But Kane did have one, and they said, "Oh, well, you can't sit in first class now because the seat is gone because you didn't check in time." And then myself and Jeff, we're sitting in these two first class seats. So they go, No, you stay in these seats. Hey, you're the champs. You're a big deal. You're the champions. You should stay there. So obviously we get sent to wrestler's court. And Bradshaw actually tells me before we go to this, he said, "Look, I know this wasn't on you. This was on Michael Hayes. He's going to get the blunt of this, so just roll with it." And I remember we're sitting there, and he just paces back and forth. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you two young men that have been with this company for about a year. Not long at all. About a year. And these two men won the World Tag Team titles of the WWF. And it went to their heads so damn fast. The next day they're sitting in first class, and they took a 10-year veteran, Kane, a former world champion's seat." And Kane said, "Can I please have my seat?" "No, you can't have it." And they said to Kane, they said, "No, you can't have it, Jobber. Go get in the back." He said, "The audacity of these two." He said, "Has success gone to their head or what?" He said, "And ladies and gentlemen," he said, "everyone here in the jury," he said, "it could have been your seat. It could have been your seat. It could have been your seat, because these Hardy boys don't care about anybody." And we're sitting there like, oh boy. And then he says, "And let's talk about Michael Hayes." Michael Hayes is the man who he put this whole thing together. He was sitting in first class, and it was his idea. He said, "And I don't know," he said, "are the Hardys just this naive, or truly do they have that big of a head that they had to be in first class now that they're the WWF Tag Team Champions?" And he said, "All right, we're going to do sentencing." And then we come back, and he says, "All right, here's sentencing. We find everyone guilty."
This is The Undertaker, correct?
Yeah, this is The Undertaker now. He says, "All right, sentencing is done." He says, "I have been provided a bottle of Jack Daniels by Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, so I am going to let them off the hook." He said, they're okay in this court. He said, "Michael Hayes, you have to buy Kane dinner for the next week because you stole his damn first class meal." He said, "And you have to carry his bags." It was something very, very random like that. And everything ended up being okay, but it was a wild time, and it was funny. The exaggeration that JBL would go into was just unbelievable. Amazing. It was unreal.
Amazing. And it carries you, all that craziness, into these iconic TLC matches that, I mean, you and I have done so many episodes of the podcast. Go to the archives, extremehardy.com, if you want to really hear a lot of the in the weeds stories of these tables, ladders, and chairs matches, but you guys truly changed the way that pro wrestling was presented during that time period, and people still have so much idolization of this series of matches, and you laid the groundwork for so many. I mean, what made each of those three teams special in their own way?
It was really a special synergy between us. Like myself and Jeff and Edge and Christian, we always had great chemistry. We really knew each other, like we'd been working together our entire lives in many ways. And then the Dudleys added such a different and unique element because they were like a more roughneck team. They were brawlers. They were big bullies and whatnot. And then, they had tables from ECW. The tables match at the Royal Rumble was an idea I'd pitched because I knew they were really established with tables. And I knew that tables is something that we could use that would be crazy, much like the ladder match. I've kind of tried to run the parallel with the match with the Dudleys, with the match with Edge and Christian. And then once we combined all these elements, you have characters that are interesting, that work really well together, and then each of them is kind of represented by this inanimate object. Myself and Jeff, we were the ladder guys. The Dudleys were the table guys. And with Edge and Christian, they were the chair guys. And just the synergy that came together from creating these matches with these inanimate objects. And we were very lucky because we were able to break ground. We were the first guys to get to do this. So that made it even more special because it had never been seen before. Being able to be the first to do a certain style of match is such a great gift to be blessed with, and we're very lucky.
I think that everything you guys did, I would put it up there with being as impactful as what Rock did, what Austin did, what Taker did, and it was counterculture combined with right place, right time, and the perfect appetite, alongside the fact that WCW was kind of tanking down the drain at the same time. And I know that was something that worried you guys a lot.
Yeah, everyone was critical of that, and no one wanted to see WCW fail because being at WWE, in case you were going to get released or fired or you're unhappy with what you're doing, it was nice to know there was some other place you could go and you could still make a great living and still get TV time and these amazing opportunities. Once we realized WCW was on the verge of folding, we knew that was going to be bad for the industry because that was going to allow Vince just to do whatever he wanted. He could pay what he wanted. He could make people do whatever he wanted, and it was going to give him so much more power. And I felt like too that there was probably going to be repercussions on the wrestling fans because the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era, it was so unique because both shows were like gunning to be more creative or more edgy or more exciting than the other show, and that's what made for some of the most compelling wrestling TV ever, and that's why fans loved it so much because there was so much to tune into, and both shows were on high gear the whole while, trying to offer the very best product.
It all culminates at WrestleMania 17, which I think a lot of people look at as the end of the Attitude Era. WCW goes out of business the week before, and then TLC 2 happens right after that. The final Nitro, such a bizarre night. It's a simulcast, TNT, the TNN network at the time, eventually Spike. Vince McMahon shows up on Nitro. Shane McMahon shows up on Nitro. What is it like in the locker room that night?
It was exciting just for the fact that we had won, right, the war, but everyone from a business perspective knew that it was probably going to make things a lot more difficult going forward, and it's going to take away a lot of the wrestlers' power when it comes to WWE back to being a monopoly again, just a one company. I think everyone was bereaving, WCW. Even we knew it was gone. We're like, this was our competitor. This pushed us to be better. Whenever they had 83 weeks of winning, WWE.
I've heard that a couple times over 83 weeks.
Whenever we've had 83 weeks of losing and then winning, It just pushed WWE to be more creative, more edgy, do something different, take a new direction. And sometimes that's what anyone has to do. Whether you are a wrestling company, you kind of have to go in a new direction or change your identity. Or if you're just a wrestler, sometimes you have to reinvent and get a new identity, go a new direction. It was an exciting night to watch, but we knew it was going to be bad for the greater good.
And it leads to WrestleMania, TLC 2. I think TLC 2, for my money's worth, and I'm curious what you guys think out there, I think TLC 2 is probably the most memorable match of yours and Jeff's career. And between
Thank you.
Jeff taking the craziest spear spot you're ever going to see in wrestling history,
Iconic, man. An iconic spot.
you and Bubba going through a car crash of tables off the ladder, and being in that stadium environment at the Astrodome. Take us through that day. Take us through the match coming together, and how did you guys feel upon the conclusion of that?
We all worked together really well at that time, and I feel like we were really good at like collaborating and everybody making sure they get their special moments in where they look good. There was a little bit of an argument at one juncture while we were going over this match about which spot was going to happen last, and it's, were we going to do the edge spear of Jeff off the ring to the mat, or are we going to do the Matt Bubba push through the 4 tables? And that got a little heated, especially between Bubba and Adam at one point. And Jeff was just like, I don't know, I'll do whatever you want to. Like, Jeff's like, my stuff's gonna steal the show anyway. I'm sure that was his mentality. And he's not wrong. But we ended up going with RDO last, mainly because we needed more people to kind of like create that spot and make it happen the way Bubba's able to move the ladder out and set it into place so that, you know, a lot of people think about this. If Jeff climbs up a ladder and like goes to grab the belt and then someone kicks the ladder or whatever, it's still going to be laying down. And if he spears and lands on the ladder, it's like it could kill you. You know, so that was something we had to be very creative about. How do you get the ladder out of position? And we needed more bodies to do that. So we ended up going with them before, and then myself and Bubba, we did that last deal. But the match came together pretty easy. We had gotten really good at putting these things together. We figured it out. We went out there and did it. We were happy with it when it was all said and done, and we were just very proud to go out there, and it felt like we had given another effort at a WrestleMania where it was a show-stealing performance.
Were you watching Jeff take that spot? Were you paying attention?
I did. I was selling outside, and I remember like propping myself up on the guardrail and just kind of, I was selling down like, you know, so I could see through my hands or whatever. Hey, I want to watch that. Because it was, I mean, really, like, that's not something you can really practice. Yeah. And it is very dangerous because if you get speared and you over-rotate and you land on your head, it's curtains. You know, it's over. So, yeah, I was definitely watching that, and I was like, of course he does it perfect. you know, of course.
How was he feeling after that?
He was okay. It wasn't bad. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's just thinking about that now. I think about that in my old vessel, about having to do that now, man. And I was like, ooh, that'd be it. Yeah. I'd have to be in the ice bath for 30 minutes the next day.
And yours, I mean, you and Bubba go through perfectly together. But that could have gone wrong, too.
That could have gone wrong. And I know one thing Bubba and I were saying, we're like, look, man, we got to trust each other, because if one of us jumps early and they break the table and the other guy jumps in, there's going to be shrapnel and someone's going to get stabbed. You know, it's just it's very dangerous. So like we have to trust one another, and we did. Our timing was impeccable.
Well,
cool.
The Hardys will be in wheelchairs by the time they're 29. So look at him. How good does this guy look right now, guys? I mean, come on, man. Look at him.
Thank you very much.
You do the cold plunges, the morning cardio, the barriqua from Queen's Wife. All those 3 things probably help get you in shape, right?
Probably so.
Once upon a time.
Yeah. Yeah, probably so. It definitely, the barriqua from Puerto Rico definitely keeps you on your toes. No doubt.
Yeah, that keeps you doing sprints around the house along with the children, the gaggle of children.
Yeah.
Man, Gothic baby's more over than you at this juncture.
We'll see.
I don't know.
We'll see. I'll still give her a hard time.
That's right. Well, maybe one day you'll be trying to tell your Hardy boys how they should be walking around with forks, knives, and spoons.
I can't wait, yeah.
And then
I already said I'm just ready to be the wheelman, brother. I'll just drive you guys to town.
Big money Matt's not a gimmick.
Yeah, I'll just take a little cut, brother.
Just a wee fee
Yeah.
from that. Man, this has been so great. Just iconic years, the Attitude Era, really
Very much.
industry defining, full of so many great characters. And the Hardys, in my opinion, were just as big a part of that as Austin, as Rock, as Taker, all that. And I think pretty much everyone here would agree because they're here still seeing you guys. And we're going to see Jeff in just a second here. But when you look back on the Attitude Era, I mean, how do you sit with it?
I mean, once again, I am very grateful that we got our start and we were able to participate in the Attitude Era because that has allowed us just being on that powerful TV, and still we've been very blessed. I mean, we've been on TV for 25 years, which is crazy. 25 years, like consistently been on TV, and it's cool. But just the fact that we were in the Attitude Era when wrestling was so watched. I mean, I hear every day in public somewhere where someone says, "Oh my God, I loved watching you in the 90s. Oh my God, the TLC matches. Oh my God, the ladder match you had with Edge and Christian. Oh my God, you guys used to be the tag team champions." Oh my, it's just crazy. And just the fact that those memories resonate so strongly in so many people's minds is mind-blowing to me, but it is also a blessing because it has allowed me to have great longevity.
I was a child of the Attitude Era. I'm sure a lot of people here were children or young adults of the Attitude Era. And on behalf of everyone here, we thank you guys for everything you gave to the industry, to wrestling fans like us, to wrestlers. We have wrestlers in the crowd here. So let's give it up for the Hardy Boys, guys, because
All right.
absolutely. I want to remind everyone, too, the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy drops every single Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern, extremehardy.com, or wherever you get your podcasts, and adfreeshows.com gives you early access as well. And if you'd like to get on board with the Extreme Life, advertisewithhardy.com is your place to do it. Promote your business to the extreme by getting it out in front of thousands of listeners and viewers every single week. In just a couple minutes, guys, Brother Nero, Jeff Hardy, is going to take the stage, and he's going to do an acoustic performance for you. Matt, anything else you'd like to add here?
No, this is fun. We really enjoy doing these, and just I want to thank everyone that came out, and we hope you guys enjoyed this as well. And it's very fun to sit back and tell some more stories and just interact and have fun with people and reflect on the past, which is really, really cool. And it makes me excited for the future because this is something that John had just brought up then, just trying to like do these cold plunges and the morning cardio and trying to take care of yourself, because now it almost makes me want to push myself to see how good I can be in this day and age. And both myself and Jeff are very motivated, both in life and professionally right now. So very excited about the future, and I'm very blessed that we have such a great past.
The words have been spoken. This has been the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We will see you next time.
My skin's dying because you're under it. I'm done lying to myself for this, for all the wonder in believing that it's making me weak. I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete. My skin's dying. I'm done lying.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Doug Gustafson, and we are from Columbus, Ohio. First learned of Conrad through his podcast network. I'm a big 83 Weeks fan. Probably got into a little bit more credit card debt than what we wanted to during the course of the pandemic. We wanted to get rid of some of that. My wife and I had luckily bought the house many years ago and had quite a bit of equity built up in it. We are looking to actually redo our bathroom, things around the house that we wanted to do with the other equity that we have left over. We've been talking about refinancing forever, and I finally just took the plunge and called the number, got a hold of him, and from start to finish, it was just fantastic. I had Diane within the day. The communication with her was fantastic. The process moved quicker than I could have ever hoped. My name's Doug Gustafson from Columbus, Ohio. I ended up saving $800 a month with Save with Conrad, and am able to also update our bathroom.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com.